Dr. Sangeeta, is she there? Dr. Sangeeta and Professor Dr. Singhal.
Yes, I am here.
Yes, they are there. Mrs.
Yes.
Sangeeta, we really welcome you, ma'am.
Yes, thank you, sir. Thank you.
And thank you so much that
Thank you.
you are heading such prestigious institution because of which we all are here today. Dr. Sangeeta, would you like to say for a minute something, ma'am?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Yeah, please, ma'am.
Mr. S.V. Ghatalia was born on 26 January 1920 and he died on 10th September 2008. Mr. Ghatalia was a noted and successful chartered accountant, author of Spicer and Pegler's Practical Auditing, Indian edition, and The Law and Practice of Super Profit Taxes, founder of S.V. Ghatalia and Company, Ghatalia and Junjunwala, S.V. Ghatalia and Associates and Ghatalia, and Cooper Management Consultants. He pioneered management consultancy services in India in 1963. His academic contribution was he was a professor at the Sydenham College from 1952 to 1978 and head of the Department of Accountancy and the Department of Management. He was a member of the University Senate and Syndicate and Dean of the Faculty of Commerce in 1969-70. He presented the university budget for several years. His professional contribution was Central Council member 1958 to 61, Chairman of Western Indian Regional Council 1955 to 56 and 1957 to 58, founder member of Bombay Chartered Accountants Society, member of the Forum of Free Enterprise, member of National Productivity Council, member of Company Law Board Advisory Committee, and member Appellate Tribunal Bar Association, presented a national paper on information for management at the 10th International Congress of Accountants in 1972 in Sydney, Australia, and contributed several professional articles. Now, he was a director of several companies and founded a charitable trust, S.V. Ghatalia Foundation. I personally express my deep condolence to Revid family.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And in fact, you have cut down my task and my work, ma'am, you know, because you have introduced him absolutely in depth and everything what I had to say. So, friends, I would just say that he was an eminent chartered accountant. He was very, very wealthy chartered accountant, very successful. Yet he chose to teach at Sydenham for 25 years. That makes him a very rare person. We are so privileged that today we have eminent senior personalities who are associated with him, who are going to share their memories with us today. So Mr. Y.P. Trivedi, who has been an eminent senior counsel and a director of Reliance Industries. I think, Mr. Y.P. sir, you've been the longest serving independent director of Reliance since 1992. And your contribution has been so widely appreciated, not by only the board, but also by the founding member Ambani's, you know. Mr. Trivedi has been a director of many companies like Supreme, Imami. He was president of Indian Merchants Chambers, WI, CCI Club, and many others. In the rare distinction, he was member of parliament for many years. He was associated with Mr. Ghatalia for more than 40 years. And Mr. YP sir, I'm sure you name the best. Can I invite you to please share your memories, sir?
Certainly, it will be a pleasure. But let me tell you, you have forgotten to mention one thing. I am a Sydenhamite.
Oh.
I am a Sydenhamite of those days when Dr. Panandikar was the principal, Dr. Muranjan was our rector, and in the old building at Boribandar. So that's apart. Now today you are asking me to say a few words about Sri Ghatalia. It is very difficult for me to say anything because I am related to him. I am his brother-in-law. And he used to say, he had 3 brothers-in-law, Rashik Bhai Kamani, myself, and Bandulera Shah. And he always used to say, they are not my brothers-in-law, they are my brothers-in-law. That was the way he used to say. But coming on the serious side, I do agree, he was a brilliant man in his own right. He was the first chartered accountant who was a visionary, thought of many other branches in which the accountancy faculty can dwell in. I am sure he was doing costing, and I remember he did some costing, some villa companies, and on that day it was his birthday, and Mr. Birla sent him 68 roses to celebrate his birthday. He was so successful. And I can tell you one thing, if you would have lived and if you would have continued with the practice, I'm sure he would have made SP Ghatalia and Company an international firm and probably could have competed with the big 4. As a person, he was frank, sincere, very hardworking, and honest to the core. Everybody knows who has seen him. He was handsome, very sophisticated, and a man who will not take any nonsense at all. He was such a stickler. In profession, he was like a legend. The institute, I must say, did not recognize his talents to the extent to which it should have done. I personally believe that when he has written that book on auditing, I was talking with some chartered accountant, and he told me that in his mind, this book is a Bible in auditing. And that was a great tribute paid to him, the man who came to Mumbai with no support and rose by the dint of his sheer hard work and became such a successful chartered accountant. Now, so much is said about his role in educational field. Let me tell you, he was a professor for more than 25 years and a very loud profession. I was told that the girls in Sydenham College were waiting for him to arrive, tall, handsome, and overbearing in every way. And he had his own sense of humor. When a girl would come to him and say, I cannot understand bookkeeping, he would smilingly say, then why don't you do some housekeeping? That is the way he used to handle things. And so far as his contribution to University Senate and Syndicate, I have testimony of so many people. The way in which he used to prepare budget for university. Mr. Minu Masani told me that these budgets remind him of the union budgets. And he said, someday, I hope he will be able to present a union budget. Such meticulous he was, hardworking, and will not allow any defaults to take place anywhere. It was a great thing because as a man also, he was very amenable, very lovable, very friendly, and always used to share his joys with everybody else. It is difficult to forget a man like this who had such great achievements to his credit. I might say he was a stalwart in his profession, an ideal in the field of education, and more than anything else, was a great and honest gentleman. Thanks for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much, YP. Sir, I also welcome Ashwin Bhai Shroff. He has joined us. And Vishnu Bhai Haribhakti, we are humbled by your presence today, sir. Vishnu Bhai, we remembered you just before a minute that you were one of our also eminent and outstanding professor at Sydenham, Vishnu Bhai. So we welcome you, sir. Okay, friends. So, Mr. YP, sir, as you say, okay, here he was very immaculately dressed. And
Yes,
he was a man of very high taste.
absolutely.
That was
A very handsome man. Tall, handsome.
Yes, very tall, handsome. And I think, as you said, very, very immaculately dressed. And in Sydenham, it was said that every time he comes to the college, he would wear a new suit. Huh?
Oh God.
Yeah, we don't know. We have to ask Nanak what was his wardrobe size. But I think it's being said. Okay, friends, we have Bansibhai Mehta, who is an eminent chartered accountant and a legend in profession. He is chairman of Gillette India and on board of many companies, including Procter Gamble, Pidilite, Atul, and many others. Bansibhai was associated with Mr. Ghatalia for many years as a professor of accountancy at Sydenham College. And Bansibhai, sir, you taught most of us, many of us. Can you please share, sir, your views and your memories, sir?
Okay. You want me to speak?
Yes, sir, please. Sir.
Difficult to speak about Kakubai, as I used to call him. That was his pet name. His name was Kakubai. So I used to call him Kakubai. And then he'll say, we will just do our lecture work and then we will have a cup of tea. Then you tell me what you have. I came to know him for the first time in 1954. When I was the student in the final BCom of Sydenham College. So I had the great privilege of being his student, his colleague, and as an acquired status, his younger brother. Now, when he joined us, then the most impressive thing about him at that time in my formative age was the way he used to dress. I mean, it was immaculate. I've never seen him in any dress other than absolutely immaculate for a professional person. And it was only later that I realized that the dress was only one of the things, but behind that is a wealth of knowledge, emotion, commitment, sincerity. And from that time, I had developed a great respect for, I used to call him at that time professor, but now Kakuwai. Then when I joined college as a lecturer in 1961, he was a person who used to tell me that, look, the most selfish community in the world is the student community. If they believe that they have to lose anything, then they will remain quiet. But if they feel they have nothing to lose, then they'll make hell of noise. This was his advice to me. I followed that and concentrated on my effort. I must say that, of course, Professor Ghatalia had a very soft voice, and which did not reach even beyond the first two rows sometimes. So I told him, I said, we should do something about this. So he said, fine, you find a way in which it can be done. So we found that it was possible to have loudspeakers, microphones. So he and I went to the principal and said that this is the way. So he said that I'll ask the education secretary. Education secretary after 2 months wrote back saying that who is going to pay for it? So eventually the client who had agreed to supply the loudspeakers and microphone system told me that he'll bear it. He'll give it free. There's no problem. So then the government raised a query that who is going to pay for the running charges of user of the mic. So that was the end of the Professor Ghatalia. Although he had a wealth of knowledge and wealth to impart with others, his voice did not carry. But the point is that eventually what mattered was the depth of his learning, the depth of his teaching, and of course, in those formative years, the way he used to be dressed, very impressive. Uh, now, my relationship with him started developing when the third conference of institute was held in Mumbai. That was in 1959 January. He was the chairman of the professional committee, what they call the committee, which is in charge of the program. So he took a liking for me when I told him that I want to write a paper. And I was, mind you, less than 1 year old in the profession at that time. So he told me, he said, don't you think you are too young for writing a paper? So I said, I feel like doing this, and this is what you have said in journal. So he said, all right, then you do, I know you, so you can do this, but you do it jointly with some very senior person. In life, his approach was always helpful, positive, but at the same time taking care of any possibilities of mistakes, this possibility of anything bad coming out of. After that, my relationship with him developed more because of my involvement in his writing books on auditing, wealth tax, etc. And it was a standard practice that I used to visit him in the evening, sit with him, and do whatever was required to be done by me. However, to me, what I can never forget and what I always cherish is the personal rapport that I developed with him. We traveled together. We went, wherever we went, Mr. and Mrs. Ghatalia and myself and my wife, we went together. And then what happened was that he took me on to the educational syndicate of Baroda University and then Marathwada University. So it gave us a chance to travel together in his car. And I learned a lot from him at that time and even thereafter. Then I was involved with him in writing of his books, particularly the book on taxation. And I used to be a regular visitor to his office in the evenings, not necessarily to look at the book only. He did the two things that not many understand about him. One is he is a dyed-in-the-wool scholar. He never dealt with anything unless he dealt with it thoroughly. So to deal with him, we had to have the patience to go along with him. Then he'll require you so many more things to be produced. But he was a perfectionist, which was evident not merely in his dress, but in his work. Whatever work he did, it was something which was perfect. He was also a true friend. He was very reserved. I mean, he was not a person who would socialize easily. He was a person who kept his own distance. He was a person who didn't really believe that, you can be nice to somebody. If he was nice, he was nice. If he was not nice, he was not nice. That was Kakubai. After he retired from the college and he was not keeping good health, etc., I used to call on him. I used to call on him fairly regularly because his son Nanak was my student. Dilip, who unfortunately died, was my student. And I'll just give you one example of his approach to integrity and ethics. His brother was appearing for the first year commerce examination. And in those days, we used to have a staff common room meeting in which the results were discussed and then finally decided. Everything happened. Then at the end of the meeting, he called me and he said, I want to ask you one thing. Now the results are signed. So can you find out if my brother has passed? He was the head of the department. He was sitting in the particular, this meeting, he will sit at the back. Why? Because he said, my brother has taken the exam. I don't want to participate in it. That was his sense of integrity. Later part of his life, because of his ill health, I visited him a couple of times. But I found that he was becoming emotional, and I must confess, I also started becoming emotional. And I realized it was not good for him, not good for me, because to get well soon, you need to be less than emotional. So I did not visit him many times, but I have one thing which I will never forget is that, and as some of you know it already, I used to call him Kaku Bhai. And he used to treat me as his younger brother. Now that was the kind of relationship that we built up. First, as chartered accountant, then as colleagues in Sydenham College, and thereafter as a mutual admiration society. It is a heartening thing that we are now having the 100th year. If he had been alive, I think reaching a certain age is important, but not important enough. But to be remembered, not merely for 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, 100 years, is more important. And I think some of us who may survive the weather and all the epidemics that are happening would be remembering Mr. Ghatalia, my Kakubhai, as I used to call him, with reverence, affection, and fond dream that we would have many more persons with this same kind of professional approach, finesse in his outward appearance, and softness of heart, despite all his very, very forbidding demeanor. He used to be somebody whom people used to forget, even asking for a small question. But he was very soft. I would like to join with respect, humility, and my affection as a person who was his adopted younger brother to say that is this 100th centenary of Mr. Ghatalia's lifetime, if he had been alive, can be commemorated in some more substantial way. And that substantial way, there will be many like me who would be willing contributors. And I'm sure that if something is done for Professor Ghatalia, for example, institute a prize in his name, institute a prize in the institute, institute a prize or in the university, but keep it in a manner which is consistent with his sense of duty, humility, and dignity. Thank you very much for inviting me. It has been an emotional evening for me also. And I truly remember that I was in the Sydenham College as a teacher for 30 years. Of those 30 years, close to 25 years I spent with Kakubai. So I'm very happy that I had the chance in my lifetime at a very younger level of profession that he guided me. He actually handheld me. And I benefited so much from him in terms of his perfect sense of perfection, sense of timing, sense of discipline. I think if something is done in his honor memory, then I think that will be very appropriate because you, as they say in English, they don't make such people nowadays. Nowadays, you don't find people of Mr. Ghatalia's caliber, character, and impressive scholarly temperament. I'm very happy to join in this meeting, and I'm sure that all of us will pray for his everlasting memory, and more importantly, follow the ideals that we believed he was distinctive, not just doing the work for our profession, but values. I'm sorry if I take one example, that there was a very leading industrialist who was in Sydenham as a first-year commerce student. And he had taken the exam in bookkeeping as it was then known. And then I went through the paper and I found no mistake whatsoever. So I said I must give him full marks because there is no reason why I should deduct even single mark. But at the same time, I thought that since he was the head of the department, I should go and ask him. So he said, look, I don't want to pronounce a judgment, but just leave the paper with me. I'll find out what marks I would give. Then after 3 days, I went to his office and asked him. So he said, you will be very unfair if you deduct even 1 mark from this student. That student was Dilip Piramal.
Oh,
So that was Ghatalia, and very, very professional, very, very straightforward, very outwardly stern, but inwardly very soft, as they say in Sanskrit. Vajradapi Gariyani, Katorad Gariyas. So Mr. Ghatalia has left behind a culture which unfortunately has not remained in a very visible form, but people like us who remember him are able to recall the fortitude and the strength of his character and the strength of his professional endeavor. I'm very happy to have been a friend, and later he designated me as his younger brother in life. And I'm very happy to associate myself with this function. And as I said before, I think we need to do something in the field of education in the name of Professor Ghatalia, because he was a person who continued for almost 30 years, more than 30 years in Sydenham College. And it would be a very happy thing that we remember him not merely because of his achievements and demeanor and culture, but also because of his love for education. Love for education was something which was supreme in his. The way he used to spend time on this lecture, remarkable. I'm very happy to associate with this, and I would like to wish that there are many more speakers who will have something more to say or something different to say. But I am quite sure that there cannot be any doubt that he was one of the finest members of the institute. I have always considered him to be a role model. I've followed him. I've done in my own way something which was regarded as appropriate. And I hope, the wish that this function will be a torch bearer for doing something which is more lasting and which is more, let us say, inspiring from the point of view of the coming generation, who may or may not have the ability or patience to understand what Mr. Ghatalia stood for. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm very happy.
thank you, Bansi Bhai. Following your wishes, sir, we the alumni members will take up instituting some prize, making some such memory in his name, which will stand much beyond these 100 years and his contribution, sir. We will also take your YP Trivedi and all everyone's guidance, sir.
Yeah, but I think
Yeah.
my experience with Bombay University is somewhat dismal.
Okay. Sir, we'll discuss that separately, sir. How to
I'll just see, to give you one example, if I may. There is a special gold medal named after S.B. Bilimoria, who was also teaching at Sydenham at one time. And that was a gold medal. And that was to be given to a person who scored the highest number of marks in accounting and auditing. Now, that just happened to be that I scored the highest number of marks. So I went there, to college, to inquire about the gold medal. So they said that we have the die. You take the die away And then you can buy the gold and you can put the gold inside, and then that will be the gold medal that you can take. And that's government college. I used to Ghatalia, and I used to be very sarcastic about it. And why don't we rename Sydenham College as Shivaji College or something? Lord Sydenham was a person who was known for his very high quality. Thank you. If anything is done in his name and honor, etc., I would be very honored to give my might.
Thank you.
Bansibai, it will be a very sad day if the name is changed. Because when I was in Sydenham College, it was called the finest commerce school on this side of Suez. People used to come from Sri Lanka, people used to come from Kenya, and so many places, because that was the only commerce institution on this side of Suez. And we used to be interviewed before we were given admission, like the American schools. So don't think of changing the name for the sake of changing.
Thank you, Trivedi sir. Welcome, Mrs.
With your permission, do I have your permission to? Because I had a very long day since morning.
No, please. Thank you so much, Nancy. Thank you, sir. And we, sir, welcome Mrs. Sandra Shroff also. She has joined in the group. Welcome, Mrs. Sandra Shroff.
Yes, I've been here since the beginning. Just in case you think I'm late.
No, you're logged in.
Anything that is done by anyone who was an admirer of Mr. Ghatalia needs no thanks.
Okay, sir.
I think what is needed is more passion.
Yeah, ma'am, I'm sorry, ma'am. I think maybe you're logged in by your secretary or someone else, so I couldn't see the name. I'm really sorry, ma'am.
That's okay. We had quite a song and dance to get in.
Now because
I'm not too good at these things.
I've been on my legs almost in the morning.
So, friends, we have now Mrs. Sandra Shroff, Sandra Rajubai Shroff. She is the vice chairman of UPL, earlier known as United Phosphorus, one of the top 5 agrochemical companies in the world today. It is a truly an Indian MNC with manufacturing plants in more than, I think, 45 countries and operations in more than 120 countries all over the world. She considers CSR as enlightened self-interest. And I found this very, very profound when I read about this in one of your Rotary address. We collect Sandra Bhavi. When we used to go for audit of UPL at Vapi, most of us are article trainees. We enjoyed the hospitality of your group at the family bungalow which you had at Devka Beach. All in our young days, we had wonderful time. And she has been associated with Mr. Ghatalia as a client. Can you please share your memories with him?
But nothing would give me greater pleasure because I remember him as a little bit of a wag. One would be very, very careful when to see him, and you make sure that everything that you wanted to say was properly lined up and all your papers were in order. And of course, no hanky-panky whatsoever. So when I was informed that this is the birth centenary of year of the late Sri S.V. Ghatalia, and that a Zoom meeting was being organized in his memory, I felt I should say a few words on that occasion. All the memories of our association with him surfaced to my mind, and I readily agreed to share my memories with you. I knew him from the time he was attending to the audit and the tax matters of Excel Industries. We had a long association with the late Goenji Bai. After we started our 2 companies, United Phosphorus and Shroff Industrial Chemicals, we appointed him as our auditor for Shroff Industrial Chemicals. We were a small-scale unit at that time. Our factories were at Wapi, and his brother Kulinbai used to come to do the audits of our books. In 1980, we were on a growth trajectory and sought his advice on our future plans. I remember his advice that if you want to grow big, you have to have all your manufacturing facilities in one company only. It was on this advice that we merged the two companies in 1980. Since then, he has been our auditor, tax advisor. Due to change in law, the auditors have to be changed, but we still get benefit of tax advice from his ex-partner, Kirit. And we still remember Ghatalia when we see Kirit. As an auditor, he was known to be a very thorough and strict auditor. He will never allow any hanky-panky ways of dealing with accounts. I remember that my accountants, who were otherwise quite carefree, were always very tense when they had to go and meet him for the finalization of the audit. He had given us many tax planning ideas for the company as well as the family, which resulted in a good amount of tax savings. In fact, he was a one-man institution. In the 1970s and 80s, since the time I knew him, he was at the peak of his profession. He is still remembered as an expert tax advisor, a perfectionist, very knowledgeable and very thorough in his work. I am told that his book on auditing was perhaps the only his book on auditing. I'm told that his book on auditing was perhaps the only book on the subject at the time, and all students and professionals were referring it to clear any doubts. I'm very thankful to the organizers of this meeting, especially his son Nanak, to give me an opportunity to share my memories of the great academician and professional. Thank you very much indeed. And we will always remember him in our company, and we'll always be grateful for the advice that he gave us and on which we have grown. He has been a very important contributor to our growth and the way in which we do business and the way in which we run our company. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Sandra Babi. And I think the growth of United Phosphorus in your group, UPL, is as meteoric as the growth of Indian capital markets from an SSI. What you it is now truly, and I think the only Indian multinational companies, an Indian company with so much operations all throughout the globe. So,
138 countries.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We have Mr. S. Ganesh, who has been a senior counsel at Supreme Court of India and who has been an eminent expert on tax laws, Income Tax Act mainly, sir. I'm sure many of us, sir, you have represented us at some Supreme Court matter or the other. Many of Mr. Ghatalia's clients also. And he has been associated with Mr. Ghatalia in his early days as a student. Can you, sir, please share, Mr. Ganesh, your memories, sir?
It is an honor and a pleasure and privilege to be with all of you this evening. I must first of all start with a clear disclaimer. I'm not a Siddhanamite, and nor, unlike the illustrious personages who preceded me just now, nor did I have an intimate personal relationship with Mr. S.V. Ghatalia. But tonight, my mind goes down memory lane to Advent Building in Cuff Parade, where I started my professional career by signing articles with S.V. Ghatalia and Company. I was the youngest member of the audit team, which was dispatched to Excel Industries Limited at Goregaon. I must say that Excel Industries was an exceptionally hospitable client who provided us very sumptuous meals and snacks. We used to joke that, like Italians, we could work only between meals, and that between meals we managed to do a little audit work. But 3 decades later, I had the remarkable good fortune of appearing on behalf of Excel Industries Limited before the Supreme Court in a landmark income tax case. We succeeded completely in that matter, and the Supreme Court laid down legal principles of fundamental importance which are applicable to virtually every SSC, in every fact situation, in every assessment year after year. Those principles relate to the time of accrual of income and the year of assessment of that income. I remember the delight with which the representatives who had come to the Supreme Court from Excel Industries greeted the judgment of the Supreme Court, because we had lost at earlier stages. And I told them that this was the direct result of the nourishment which I had received in their office about 3 decades earlier. I always remember my roots and the foundation which I laid in Advent and Cuff Parade, and I revisit them every now and then. And this evening is one such occasion. From those roots have emerged fruits which I have found very sweet, and for which I shall always be grateful to the firm and to Mr. Ghatalia. And I do wish I had known him better and in a more personal way during the time when I was in touch with him. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ganesh. For sir, what I share on behalf of all the Signum and many of the SVG alumni who are here, that we share the same thing, sir, that we all learned very invaluable lessons. Being rigorous, minute test to the detail with him, and which has stood by with us in our career and in our life. Slightly making life of our colleagues and juniors more difficult. But anyway, that's how the perfectionism works. Huh? So thank you, Mr. Ganesh.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Huh? Friends, I might share just as you said about the office. SVG and company had a very, very vast and rich library. And I think that was the only CA firm which had a full-time librarian. There were so many books. And anyone, even an article trainee like us, we could order any book. There was a whole culture of knowledge, books, and spreading the literacy. So thank you, Mr. Ganesh. We have now Mr. Ashwin Bhai Shroff. Ashwin Bhai is the executive chairman of Excel Industries.
Small world.
And chairman of Transfac. And he has been widely recognized for his contribution to the growth of the Indian chemical industry. He also received an ICC Lifetime Achievement Award. Ashwin Bhai, you deserve many, many more accolades and many more awards, sir. And Ashwin Bhai, we recollect, as Mr. Ganesh said, the human touch. When we used to come for audit of Excel Industries, we all used to go for lunch, the same canteen where the directors ate, the staff ate, and the workers ate. Ashwin Bhai, you have been truly a noble philanthropist. Can I request you to please share your memories, sir? He has been associated with Mr. Ghatalia as a client.
Yes. Well, Ajit Bhai, Kirit Bhai, and Nanak Bhai, thank you very much for inviting me. I know there are many stalwarts who are going to speak in the evening. I'll try and be brief and at the same time cover as much as I can. So first of all, I start with my tributes, and on behalf of Excel, tributes to Mr. Ghatalia on this 100th year. Excel's association with Mr. Ghatalia as auditor started way back in 1945. So probably I think we were one of his first few clients as a company. At that time, of course, we were not listed or anything. It was a small company, but that's how long so it's 75 years that we have had the association. And of course, the association continues even to this day whether it is by the name SV Ghatalia or another name. So Kirit Bhai Kamdar, who has been part of SVG, continues to be part of ENY, tax advisor whenever we need. Jagdish Bhai Nayak is very much associated with all our group companies and is invaluable in terms of his advice. Achla Pardi, who has also been a part of Ghatalia, has been associated with us in a very, very intimate way. And of course, how can I forget Harish Bhai Kamdar, Kirit Bhai's elder brother, who was part of SVG for a long time. And what Mr. Ganesh mentioned and what Ajit Bhai you mentioned, that Excel's canteen was a very legendary kind of thing. So I remember Harish Bhai, whenever he would go back after the audit, his grandfather would always say, Harish, you have put on a lot of weight. What's the problem? So that was the kind of canteen that we had. Goinji Bhai, of course, my uncle, he was the chairman of Excel for a long time. Sandra Babi also remembered him. And I would say both Goinji Bhai and Mr. Ghatalia were very upright gentlemen, very principled, and they would not tolerate any nonsense. So they would share their thoughts. They were both very full of integrity. So both enjoyed each other's professional and other relationship. One more dimension that is not known so much is my father, Mr. C.C. Shroff, who was an excellent chemist and the founder of Excel. At one time, Mr. Punam Chand Kamani and Mr. Ghatalia, who were both related, and Punam Chand Bhai wanted to explore whether there was copper ore in Sikkim. So my father, Punam Chand Bhai and Ghatalia Sahib, they had gone to Sikkim on a visit. Of course, it did not fructify, but at least they had gone together to explore. This was something very pioneering kind of venture. And lastly, I would like to share that how can I forget my better half, Usha Khatau, when she was studying in Sydenham, who became my wife, became Usha Shroff. She was his student, and she had extremely not only high regard as a student, but also when she started her own companies and started managing the affairs at Excel and our other group companies, she would always go to him for tax advice, and many of the tax advices that he had given are still followed. We have companies which are created as a result of Ghatalia Sahib's advice. So I am really grateful on behalf of the whole family and on behalf of Excel for all the wonderful guidance that he had given. And of course, enough has been said about his immaculate personality. I would not go and repeat that. But wonderful to be invited. Thank you very much, Ajit Bhai, Kirit Bhai, and Nanak Bhai. Wonderful. And I wish all the best. And I agree with Bansi Bhai that if something can be done, it will be nice, a fitting sort of tribute to him. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ashwin Bhai. Many of us, Ashwin Bhai, Sandra Bhabi, we have been shareholders of your companies. And this was one thing which we learned from Mr. Ghatalia, that I think he invested so very well during his active years that his net income was perhaps more after his retirement, thanks to the wise investments he made in various blue chips. And investment and research has been very, very my passion in life. So I think this was another one major lesson we learned from Mr. Ghatalia, Professor Ghatalia, sir. Can I request now my co-inviter, Mr. Kirit Kamdar, who was partner with S.V. Ghatalia and Associates, and now partner with Ernst & Young, to say a few words, please.
Yes, sure, Ajit Bhai. Thank you. So, respected Shri Y.P. Trivedi, Shri Bansi Bhai Mehta, Shri S. Ganesh, Shri Ashwin Bhai Shroff, Srimati Sandra Shroff, Dr. Sangeeta Pakade, the principal, Sydenham College, my dear seniors and friends. At this moment, I'd like to just thank one person who has been instrumental in my journey with S.V. Ghatalia, and that is my brother, late Harish Kamdar. He was my inspiration and role model, as well as a mentor to me. As a school kid, I was fascinated to see the thick books that he would read for his CA exams, and it was because of him that I decided to pursue the CA course. I remember going to meet Sri S.V. Ghatalia after I had cleared my CA entrance exam in respect of starting my articleship. He stated that I would have to go to office all my life, and that why do I want to start going to office 3 years earlier. He told me to go and enjoy my college life and to come to him for articleship after my BCom. That is how I landed up in Sydenham. I did my 11th and 12th in HR at Sydenham at Stop Junior College in 78, and as suggested by Mr. Ghatalia, decided to do my articleship after BCom and thus joined Sydenham for my graduation. I must say I truly enjoyed my college days in Sydenham. I completely echo the sentiments of the distinguished speakers in respect of the comments on Sri S.V. Ghatalia. I would just like to add that besides being a thorough professional that he was a strict disciplinarian. We as juniors had to be so particular about minor things, as others would call it, but we had to dot the I's and cross the T's. We had to ensure that the lilac audit ticks were in a straight line, the final account sets were neatly folded and stapled, and no paper was jutting out. All in all, we learned a lot from him, and this has been a blessing that we have carried all through our careers, and I'm ever grateful to him. With these few words, I would hand over the proceedings to Nanak Bhai.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Kirit Bhai, before that, 1 minute, we all are very grateful and thankful to Mr. Harish Kamdar, who was your elder brother and partner, who was such a kind-hearted, generous, and soft person who really helped all of us. Nanak, please, word of thanks.
Good evening, everyone. Yeah, I think my mic is on. Good evening, everyone. It is my privilege to thank everyone, and my vote of thanks is going to be in two parts. The first part is, I would like to say a big thank you to my father, who was a teacher, and my thank you is to him today as a teacher. There are two things that I would like to recall about what he taught me, among several things that he had taught me. The first thing is that when I joined my articles, he said that the learning process of your professional life starts today. Don't ever shy away from admitting openly what you don't know, and then go and learn it. And the second thing he told me is that whenever you do work, take some time to ask yourself whether you are satisfied with what you have done. He said it's very important to ensure that you do your work to the best of your abilities without cutting any corners. These two lessons that he taught me at the beginning of my career have stood by me in my entire professional life. No, it's okay. As a token of my gratitude to him as a teacher, I have committed a small amount of 1 lakh rupees to the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, and the process will be completed in the next few days. Now, coming to the second part of my vote of thanks, I would like to thank everyone for taking the time to be here, and in particular, our distinguished and respected speakers, Mr. Y.P. Trivedi, Mr. Bansi Mehta, Mr. Ashwin Shroff, Mrs. Sandra Shroff, Mr. Ganesh, and Dr. Sangeeta Pakade. It is indeed a privilege to be associated with all of you. And finally, I would like to say my thanks to Ajit Sanghvi, Kirit Kamdar, Saif Akhtar, Mr. Yash Babrekar, Chairperson of the Alumni Cell, and Muskan Kanodia for helping us with all the logistical arrangements to have this meet. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Last thing, Nanak, we truly acknowledge and thank the Sydenham College principal, Dr. Sangeeta. She is there. Can you please just be on the screen, ma'am, for a second if you can? And Mr. Ajit Lalwani, who is the head of the proposed Alumni Association of Sydenham.
Yes.
The three volunteers, Mr. Yash, Mr. Soumya. Ma'am, thank you so much, ma'am. All this is
Thank you.
happening because of you, ma'am. And
Thank you, sir.
giving us this platform of Sydenham College and the Sydenham Alumni. And we thank Yash, Soumya, and Muskan for really tirelessly working and making this event possible. Would you like to say for a minute, ma'am, anything?
I am very much thankful to all of you, sir. And hello.
Yeah, yeah, we
I am
can.
very much thankful to all of you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And friends, the video recording of today's entire session will be available on Sydenham Alumni Twitter channel. So one can view anytime. You can share with your friends. You can share with anyone at any point of time. Thank you so much. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.